Now I know what all 0 of the people watching this video are thinking. Perspective, you galactic level intelligence. You say that Netflix Siege is a mediocre show that failed in its goal in helping toy sales. Do you think you could do better? And to that I respond, easily. Do not worry, I do not criticize without knowledge of how I would do it better. This may get a little fanficky, you have been warned. Alright, so let's lay out some ground rules. This is not my fantasy of what I would create. I will be attempting to achieve the goals intended for the series with the same limitations. Those goals being, number 1, getting the audience to connect with the characters in the Siege line. The show exists for this purpose alone, therefore it has to be the first priority, unlike the actual show. Number 2, it has to connect with the Earthrise season. That means by the end of the season, the cast has to get off Cybertron and to Earth. Number 3, it has to establish a new universe. Number 4, it has to develop Megatron and Jetfire's characters, as well as making the Decepticons as a faction more complex and having it been in the right at the start of the war. Number 5, the Versus 2-pack needs to be incorporated, as stupid as that is. And number 6, obviously, as much of the toy line has to be included as physically possible. Now let's start by identifying what went wrong with the actual show. It's too short, I've said it before, but it's too damn short. I would absolutely argue for a minimum of 13 episodes, but for the sake of this, we are going to assume that the length of the show was non-negotiable. 6 episodes is the limit. So, given that, what are the fixable issues? Well, the setting is unclear. There's a bunch of backstory mentioned offhand throughout the series that we, the viewers, have no context for, and it only leads to confusion. Anything like that is a waste of time. There are too many plots. The show can sell physical representations of the characters, not the story. The story must give way for the characters. The characters lacked distinct personalities and were dull. The show was late. If I had to take a hit to the visuals to release on time, I do. 20% of the effort gets you 80% of the result. So, now that the ground rules are laid and the flaws are identified, let's begin. Starting off, text crawl, or an opening narration. G1 had one. I don't know why other modern Transformers series refuse to employ one. This will get the viewers up to speed, establish the background, establish the current state of the world, give motivations to both factions. In 30 seconds, it could crush every question the viewers had about Siege that will never be answered. Because, let's face it, they will never be answered. Next, if they aren't a character from the Siege toy line, they aren't in this show. Unless they are Bumblebee, because let's be real, I would not be allowed to not include him even if I begged. Also getting chucked is the Allspark. No one cares, this show could easily have just been about getting the Energon to launch the Ark. Every plotline that isn't getting fuel for the Ark is gone. Next, Jetfire's character development was idiotic. Somehow he failed to see the forest through the trees, so we are redesigning this whole thing to fix his character, and give the viewers a fish out of water who could have the world explained to them. Through him, the viewers will learn how the factions have changed since the war began, how the war began, as well as the ramifications of the war. Lastly, now that the plot is about getting fuel for the Ark, every episode is going to be a buddy cop endeavor, with 2 to 3 characters being the focus for the entire episode while they try to find Energon for the Ark or try to stop the Autobots from getting the fuel. Oh, and while yes, he is from Earthrise, for a bit of levity, Wheeljack will be the only Earthrise character who is allowed to make any appearance at all. Often mentioned, but never seen fully, basically every single scene back at base will go, "Hey Wheeljack, did the engine start?" "Hey Wheeljack, how are those repairs coming?" "Wheeljack, how are things going at the outpost?" Alright, the goals are established and the rules are set. Let's begin an episode by episode breakdown. The show will basically have the same starting scene. War rages across Cybertron, with Bumblebee and Ironhide, replacing Wheeljack this time, out scouting for Energon. They will be accompanied by Powertrain, who is leading them to an Energon supply he found. While he's off in the distance, Ironhide and Bumblebee will be exercising their personalities on one another. Bumblebee will be snarky, Ironhide will be gruff and obstinate. Hopefully you won't have to put up with too much of my bad acting, but I'll do a little skit of character interaction for each episode as to relay how the characterization will be displayed in this alternate universe I'm creating. What are we even doing following this little guy? To find Energon. I thought you were at the briefing, but maybe that was just Ratchet covered in rust. Who's to say he even found anything worth bringing back? According to him, there's a good bit of Energon down this way. What's a good bit of Energon for him would barely be enough for dinner for me, and nowhere near enough to get the Ark to budge even 1 micron. You seriously don't trust him because he's small? I don't trust you in a fight because you're small. I don't trust him because he's new. Jeez, tell me how you really feel. Look, just because you're infinity megacycles old, and the Micromasters were forged only a few orbital cycles ago, that does not mean they're stupid. If he says it's enough to bring back, it's enough. I'm not that old. Really? Because you seem to have been forged before the invention of sarcasm. Maybe even before non-literal speech. Are you Primus? Are you a wise ass? Correction, you are a wise ass. And you are going to need to remember how you were talking about the Energon being barely enough for dinner, because you are going to have to eat those words. After that scene concludes, we then switch over to the Decepticon perspective. Cut to Jetfire waking up on a table with Starscream standing over him. Jetfire! Great to see you're finally awake! Finally? What are you talking about? You've been in a coma for a very long time. I don't remember going into a coma. I don't think anyone remembers the moment they walk into a room and it explodes. Simply put, back in the early days of the war, you were helping storm an Autobot stronghold. Unfortunately, the Autobots had already abandoned it and rigged it to explode. Fortunately, you were the last one in, so you got blown back out the front door rather than getting vaporized. I suppose that's fortunate. You said I've been under since the early days of the war. How long have I been out? A very long time. I know the war had been going for at least 60 metacycles by the time I was... Is the war over? Is that why I've been revived? No, heavens no. Simply put, you were a scholar before the war, and a great help to the Decepticon cause, back when the fight was handing out pamphlets on university campuses. But that wasn't what we needed by the time you found yourself engulfed in flame, and, well, you are quite large, so fixing you up would have taken parts that could have helped at least 3 more, shall we say, battle-ready soldiers. In more direct terms, you weren't going to get the help until someone with the authority demanded you get it. I wasn't much higher in position than you at the time, and by the point I'd gotten the authority, we'd lost the capacity to spare parts for anyone who wasn't capable of fighting even while injured. But recently we had a windfall of parts, and I just happen to have the authority now to demand that First Served be an old comrade without whom there would be no Decepticon army. Welcome back, old friend. Thank you, Starscream. It means a lot that you do this for me. How high did I have to climb in rank to help a friend? You just happen to be talking to the venerable Colonel Starscream. Doesn't quite have the ring of General Starscream, but I'm working on that. And that's how we do it. Bumblebee, Ironhide, and Powertrain spend the rest of the episode trying to get a sizable stash of Energon back to the Ark, with Micromaster Decepticons in pursuit just to really drive home to Ironhide that they aren't to be underestimated. And we learn through Jetfire's eyes what the Decepticon cause was like, and how the world has changed since he was around. It also calls back to G1, with Jetfire being a scientist who was injured millions of years prior, and Starscream being the one who pushed for his rescue and recovery, and establishes their marketable friendship. Jetfire would be a Decepticon from back when the cause was just. This will lead him to see what the modern Decepticon movement has become, and he will switch sides. I personally would also put in a joke where Optimus Prime would keep calling Bumblebee Goldbug, mainly because I would love to not hear Prime say, Bumblebee, just for one series. And particularly because it would be a funny subversion. It would be a prank that Ironhide pulled on B. Optimus would have never met him before, so when Ironhide left with him, he'd tell Prime he was off to search for Energon with Goldbug, and that name would just get lodged in Prime's head as Bumblebee's name. He'd then have to be corrected over and over and over, without ever actually getting it right. And the one time he was about to, they'd be interrupted by an emergency. On to Episode 2. Episode 2 would follow the Decepticons this time, fleshing out the characters of Starscream, Jetfire, Shockwave, Soundwave, and Megatron. Jetfire, may I introduce you to the other officers? Personal adjunct to Megatron and head of the Spy Corps, Soundwave. He won't tell you his rank though, so you needn't bother calling him Sir. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Might I ask why that is? Soundwave here doesn't talk about his rank. Watch this. Soundwave. I, Colonel Starscream, order you to tell me your rank.
Classified.
So, are we the same rank, or do you outrank me?
Classified.
Do you actually hold any rank at all?
Classified.
So, if we are the only two officers in the theater, which one would have command of the troops?
Classified.
For the love of all that holds reason in this universe, Starscream, stop your needless prattling. It is a distraction and one I have no logical reason to suffer. Pardon my lack of consideration, General Shockwave. May I introduce you to an old comrade I'm getting up to speed on the command chain? It's a pleasure. I'm Jetfire, former professor at the Academy of Science and Technology and early member of the Decepticon cause. One of the few elites who campaigned for rights for all Cybertronians, whose recruitment efforts led to 1/3 of the Decepticon forces at the start of the war. Yes, I know you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've more important things to do with my valuable time. Shockwave is the head of all Decepticon R&D, and second in command of all Decepticon forces. Truly a brilliant scientist, his breakthroughs have kept us ahead of the Autobots time and time again. It's foolish to give him such a high rank. It's a waste of his talents to bother him with running a command. And just like that, in that one conversation, I've established Starscream's naked ambition, Soundwave's reserved and quiet nature, Shockwave's stuck-up attitude and lack of patience, as well as why he would be left in command of Cybertron when Megatron leaves, and why Starscream would be able to claim command in the event that Megatron were removed from the scenario, despite the fact that logically it would fall on Soundwave's shoulders. And I didn't overtly state any of it. I wrote all that on the fly and didn't change anything. It's crazy how easy it is to write this stuff when you just pay attention to the characterization. It positively writes itself. The plot would be that after an initial introduction to Megatron by Starscream, the three of them would go out to inspect underperforming troops. Upon spotting an Autobot camp, they attack it, and the Autobots would flee, showing bravery and self-sacrifice. On return to base, Megatron then uses the surveillance of the fight to claim that the Autobots had ambushed them in an attempt to assassinate him in front of a large crowd of his followers. Upon seeing this, Jetfire would say to Starscream, "Since when do the Decepticons need to deceive to justify the cause?" That, compounded with learning that he was revived using Autobot components that were harvested from prisoners, causes Jetfire to change allegiance. Episode 3. In Episode 3, we would follow Sideswipe and Red Alert after they are ordered to pair up and search for Energon as a team. It would be an odd couple situation where there is one always ready to rumble and the other is a paranoid wreck, and they'd have to learn to work together. Why? There's always reason. Why would they make the two of us go find Energon? No, the question is, why am I stuck with you? Do you think they paired us up because we both look so much alike? No. Is it perhaps that we are both very fast? They could believe we are likely to run into trouble and need to make a quick escape. Oh, we need to be very careful. Stop talking. Why am I out here looking for Energon? I'm a security director. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be at my monitoring station where it is somewhat safer. I observe enemy patrols. That's what I do. I am not needed for this kind of suicidal work. And what do your observations tell you? The Decepticons grow closer to the Ark by the day. And do you have a prediction for when the Decepticons will find the Ark? Of course, to the hour. Well, I say to the hour, but it's more to the minute, actually. But that estimate is so much more volatile. And that's why you're out here looking for Energon. If we already know when the cons are going to be on our doorstep, then your job is redundant. Better to get more Energon now. Congratulations on putting yourself out of a job. Now stop talking. You'd think someone as paranoid as you wouldn't be making so much noise. At some point in the series, Red Alert's paranoia and observational skills would save Sideswipe, likely from a trip mine or something, along with him being able to near psychically predict where enemies will be and when ambushes might happen, leading Sideswipe to appreciate him. Episode 4. This episode would see Hound and Mirage go up against Impactor in order to satisfy the Versus 2-pack. The funny thing is that the show we got clearly didn't want anything to do with this, as it was obviously mandated by Hasbro, so they only made it in the most begrudging and lackluster way possible. Even if the reason for making it is stupid as hell, there is so much potential that the actual show squandered. I was able to come up with a really interesting plot in minutes, and it's just pathetic that they couldn't do anything better than the actual show. So, here's how it's going to go. The two most good-natured Autobots, Hound and Mirage, are going out looking for Energon when they find a good store of it. The two work well as a duo because they have similar personalities. Hound is kind, Mirage is a pacifist who, in this continuity, was a nature documentarian in his pre-war life. Plus, they both have visual alteration powers. Hound can make holograms, and Mirage can turn invisible. In this version, I'd have Impactor be a hunter before the war, and on the way back with the Energon, he begins hunting Hound and Mirage. The two prove formidable in a fight working together, with Hound eventually be seriously wounded, leaving it be just Impactor versus Mirage, when Mirage turns the tables. Since he has near identical skills to Impactor, as they both used to do two different versions of shooting animals who didn't know they were there, and the ability to turn invisible, Mirage begins to hunt the hunter. This might actually be enough Energon to get us off Cybertron. Everyone's going to be thrilled. Now hold your horses. We haven't gotten back with it yet. I'll celebrate when everyone's safely off this planet. Unlike an optimist like you, I'm an extreme optimist. So in my mind, we're already off this planet and out of this crummy war, because reality is not a factor to me. Just keep your eyes open. Reality has a way of clobbering people who don't believe in it, and I want this to be all over and done with and more than just a fantasy in your head. We're halfway home and in no one's territory. You can make hollow decoys to protect the cargo, and I can turn invisible and hide from the fight. What could possibly happen? A lot. By a lot, he means me, crumb dunglers. I'm sorry. I just can't make Impactor cool. I just do not have the capacity for it in my soul. He'd be a hunter, he'd be edgy and broody and up his own ass with how cool he thinks he is, and then he'd freak out and panic when Mirage gets the better of him. Maybe I'd find a way to get him converted into the Autobots because he's supposed to be one. Maybe I'd just have Mirage lock him in a cage. In either case, they'd retrieve the Energon. Episode 5. Flipping things around a bit, this time we'd be focusing on a group of Decepticon grunts. Spinister and Flywheels, or Skytread, his Christian name, as well as Refractor, his porn name. This episode would revolve around their misadventures trying to blow up an Autobot Energon depot. This episode would also be a lot more irreverent than the others. There'd be a lot of hints about the scavengers, montages, and just general funness. Man, this is boring. I miss Misfire. Oh, Misfire was the best. So much better than this stupid guy who's 3 guys.
Our name is Refractor.
No one cares, 3 guys. Yeah, no one cares when you're not Misfire. Remember Fulcrum? He was the best. Nah.
Fulcrum turned into a bomb.
Nah.
You met him on Clemency.
Nah. Why are we talking about this guy?
He's better than 3 guys here.
Oh yeah, he's so much better.
You don't know who he's talking about.
I know he's better than you.
When's Crankcase coming by with the ship?
He's been gone for 3 years.
Yeah, he went to the store to get some Injects. I'm asking why he's so late.
It sounds like he's not returning.
You don't know what you're talking about. Flytread, Skywheels. I forgot your new name.
Skytread. Skytread, step on his feet with your giant stupid feet. The final episode would see a Decepticon attack on the Ark, as the last of the Energon is en route. Optimus Prime and Ultra Magnus would team up to secure the perimeter of the Ark, while Chromia and Prowl, 2 former police officers, attempt to secure a route for the Energon shipment through the chaos. ending with Omega Supreme coming out of a dormant state and spending the last of his personal energy reserves to turn the tide. Optimus and Megatron would have a final confrontation where Megatron chides Optimus for not accepting his treaty, saying Optimus doesn't actually want to see a peaceful resolution to the war. And Optimus would respond that Megatron was right to rebel, but that his new treaty just goes back to the status quo with the roles reversed for who the oppressed class is, and that a peaceful Cybertron can never be achieved that way. But that's besides the point, due to the fact that the war has ravaged the planet so much, it can no longer sustain life. And finally, Jetfire will switch sides and bring the stranded Energon and Autobots back to the Ark. Fortunately for you all this time, I'm not going to be doing the acting bit. This may come as a surprise to everyone, but I am not in fact a woman, and am not about to attempt a voice for that. Plus, since these are 4 of the most serious-minded characters in the most time-sensitive situation, the banter, while present, will be much more subdued and sporadic. Every episode of the show will be set concurrently with all the others and will end at the start of episode 6. Any characters from the toy line I have not specifically mentioned will appear as either background characters or get minor appearances, especially during the final episode. This is where the Battle Masters and Weaponizers will finally have their opportunities to shine. Anyway, that's my outline for how I would make Siege a more enjoyable, more marketable show. I put the focus on the characters and their interactions, simplified the plot, removed the extraneous pieces, and highlighted development of the world. And before you tell me how bad this all was, and that I'm not a professional writer, I thought all this up on the fly in 2 hours with no revisions and no help. What is Netflix's excuse? So I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, share this video with any friend you think would enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed listening to me waste your time.